here we are with the second Shakespeare Folio from 1632. I'm just going to go through some of these preliminary pages to get, see the binding, to get to the title page. This is a familiar looking title page. It's almost exactly the same as the first folio. That was 1623, this is 1632, 9 years later. It uses the same engraving, Martin Droushout's engraving of Shakespeare. This is actually the only image we have of Shakespeare that is implicitly ratified by people who knew him, Hemming and Condell, those actors, fellow actors, Ben Jonson. They obviously felt this was a sufficiently Shakespearean Shakespeare to go forward. So Master William Shakespeare's Comedies, Histories and Tragedies, published according to the true original copies. So this is a sort of page-for-page reprint of the first folio, but with that editorial hand which is correcting errors, both typographical errors, but also things that perhaps are looking a bit old-fashioned by this point. Lots of Shakespeare's plays are 40 years old by this time. Language use changes quite quickly. That can get telescoped for us looking backwards, but by the 1630s I think people were thinking that's a little bit arcane, or we wouldn't do that now, or we wouldn't spell that in that way now. So it's been slightly updated, and it's nice to feel that that's a process which begins with Shakespeare actually right almost at the beginning. We've always needed to update. We've always wanted to sort of edit to bring Shakespeare in a little bit more into our present. That's not a modern phenomenon by any means. Dedicated to the Earl of Pembroke and the Earl of Montgomery, the Herbert brothers. This same edition, same epistle to the readers, signed by Hemming and Condell. I love this because it so continues to stress, it was in the first folio as well, just buy it. You know, we really need you to buy this book. Don't be browsing it in the bookstall, don't be borrowing it from someone else, buy it. And then read him therefore and again and again, and if then you do not like him, surely you are in some manifest danger not to understand him. And that's been the motto of thousands of school teachers ever since. So we can see that these plays are set out in similar format as they were in the first folio. These two columns surrounded by ruled lines. It's quite packed tight, this book. It's got a lot of words per page. In some ways the folio format is quite a luxurious format, or it bespeaks something which is important and significant, but it's also quite an efficient format for getting lots and lots of words on a page. So I suppose that's the difference between, say, a big format coffee table book in the modern world and if we still had a telephone directory. You know, they're similar size, but one is trying to cram an enormous amount of information in quite small type. And so this is quite small type here. One of the things we can see is how Warner has used this book and made some corrections, some of his own improvements. So as well as that initial sort of editorial activity on this book, readers, including Warner, make their own amendments as they go through. I like that because it means they're much less precious, much less intimidated in a way by Shakespeare. They're more ready to think, that doesn't sound right and I think I can improve it, whereas perhaps we're a little bit too hands-off or a bit inclined to put Shakespeare on a pedestal. So Warner here has changed knowing my wind, you wrong me, which is a line you could sort of make sense of if you really tried, but he, I think quite reasonably, suggests that knowing my mind would be a better reading, and he's put that reading there in the margin. And there are little red, he or someone has gone through this book with a red crayon, a red pencil, marking up certain words or certain speeches. And again, that perhaps seems to us like, you know, how would you do this with this amazing, valuable sort of book? But for me, this adds to the value of it because it reminds us of a time when people read these and they wanted to use them and they wanted to make them more usable for their own purposes, correcting them, pointing out where particular good bits were, or particular things they wanted to go back to. So Warner is working towards a sort of glossary, historical glossary of Shakespeare's language. He doesn't get there, but he does write to the top actor of the time, the top Shakespearean in a way of the time, David Garrick, asking for his support in that. Garrick himself owned a First Folio, which is also here in Oxford, not at Wadham. So we can see this book goes through comedies. They're all they're in one section. Then the page numbers start again, and the histories, and then we've got the tragedies at the end. My experience of looking through these books, both the first and the second folio, is that at this point in the 17th century, I think Shakespeare is better known as a comic writer than a tragic one. That may be exacerbated by the fact the comedies come first in the book, but they are in almost all copies where you can see that people have worked through these plays or enjoyed reading them or spilt things on them just as a byproduct of using them. You can see that the comedies are what they really go for, not perhaps as we would expect now, the tragedies. So this is a great edition, not just a reprint of the First Folio, an intervention into Shakespeare studies in its own right, a brilliant copy with this lovely frontispiece and this beautifully crinkly, marvellous paper. So the Wadham Second Folio is pretty much a perfect copy, I would say, and it's got just enough of Richard Warner, your Wadham man, to make it really sort of distinctly yours.